There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much you have worked. It comes from the people in your life, not the ones who are openly hostile. Those are easy to identify and easy to distance yourself from. The ones who produce this deeper fatigue are more difficult to see clearly. They are often charming. They are often people you care about. They are often people you have known for a long time and built genuine history with. And yet something about every sustained interaction with them leaves you slightly diminished, slightly more uncertain of yourself, slightly more confused about what is real and what is not, slightly more drained than you were before you walked into the room. The Stoics were precise about this. They understood that the company you keep has a direct effect on your character, your judgment, and your capacity for the kind of clear thinking that a good life requires. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself about the importance of observation, about looking past the surface presentation of a person to their actual patterns of behavior over time, about not being deceived by first impressions or by the warmth of affection into overlooking what repeated evidence was showing. That is not cynicism, that is discernment. And discernment, applied with genuine care rather than suspicion, is one of the most protective capacities a person can develop. Today we are going to look at 5 patterns of behavior that the Stoics would have recognized immediately as signs of a person whose character poses a genuine threat to your peace and your clarity. And then we are going to talk about what to actually do about it. 1. The person who charms first and reveals slowly. There is a specific experience that many people have had, but few describe accurately. You meet someone who seems exceptional. They are engaging, warm, genuinely interested in you. They make you feel seen in a way that few people do. The initial impression is so strong that you find yourself trusting them quickly, opening up more than you normally would, investing in the relationship with unusual speed. And then over time something shifts. Not dramatically, not in a single moment you can point to, but gradually, through the accumulation of small observations, you begin to notice a gap between the person you were introduced to and the person who is actually there. They need to be the center of attention in ways that become claustrophobic. They redirect conversations toward themselves with a consistency that starts to feel less like personality and more like compulsion. When you share something that matters to you, there is often a pivot back to them before the moment has been fully honored. When things do not go their way, the warmth disappears with a speed that is almost jarring. Epictetus taught that we should evaluate the character of those we allow into our inner circle carefully and patiently, not from suspicion, from wisdom. Because the initial presentation of a person and their actual character are sometimes very different things, and the gap only becomes visible over time. The Stoic practice here is patience combined with attention. Do not rush to judgment based on a first impression, positive or negative. But do not ignore what the pattern of behavior over weeks and months is showing you. Time is the most honest revealer of character available. And people who are genuinely good do not require you to overlook a consistent pattern of behavior that tells a different story than the charm suggested. Watch especially how they treat people who cannot do anything for them. Watch how they behave when they do not think they are being observed. Watch what happens when you gently disagree or decline something. Those moments reveal what the performance was concealing. 2. The person without genuine empathy. Empathy is not a soft skill. It is the capacity that makes genuine human connection possible. Without it, what looks like a relationship is actually a transaction. One person giving, the other receiving, with no real reciprocity at the level that actually nourishes people. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the interconnectedness of human beings, about the obligation to consider the well-being of others as genuinely part of our own well-being. He understood that a person who is incapable of genuinely caring about the experience of others is not just difficult to be around. They are operating from a fundamentally different understanding of what other people are, not fellow humans with equal inner lives, but instruments to be used or obstacles to be managed. The absence of empathy shows in patterns rather than single moments. The friend who listens to your pain and redirects to their own experience within 2 sentences. The colleague who celebrates your failure with an ease that makes you realize they were never actually rooting for you. The family member who cannot comprehend why something that devastated you is a big deal at all. These moments accumulate, and the accumulation produces something specific. A loneliness that is particularly painful because it happens inside what is supposed to be a relationship. Seneca wrote that we should choose carefully who we spend our time with, because sustained exposure to someone's way of being gradually shapes your own. A person without empathy does not just fail to support you. Over time, they model a way of engaging with the world that is corrosive to your own capacity for genuine connection. You are allowed to protect your emotional life from people who consistently demonstrate that they are not capable of caring about it. That is not cruelty. That is the recognition that genuine relationship requires two people who are actually present for each other. And that presence begins with empathy. 3. The person who manipulates rather than communicates. Manipulation is one of the most disorienting experiences available in a relationship because it operates on your perception rather than on observable facts. The manipulator does not argue with you directly. They reshape the context of the argument so that your position becomes untenable. They do not ask you to do something unreasonable. They arrange circumstances so that declining feels like a failure of your character. They do not take responsibility for causing harm. They redirect the conversation so skillfully that you end up apologizing for having raised the concern. Epictetus drew the sharpest possible line between what is within our control and what is not. Our own judgment, our own values, our own responses. Everything else falls outside our domain. Manipulation is an attempt to cross that line from the outside, to reach inside your perception and rearrange it without your consent. Gaslighting is one form this takes, a specific pattern where the manipulator causes you to doubt your own accurate memory and perception. You address something that happened, they deny it happened, or they reframe it so completely that you begin to wonder whether you misunderstood everything. Over time, this erodes the trust you have in your own judgment, and a person who does not trust their own judgment is significantly easier to control. Another form is guilt as currency. The person who makes their emotional state your responsibility, who positions every boundary you attempt to set as an act of harm against them, who creates a dynamic where meeting your own needs becomes something that requires justification and apology. The Stoic response to manipulation is not confrontation for its own sake. It is the consistent, quiet practice of returning to your own clear perception of what happened, of trusting your own memory and your own values, even when someone is working hard to make you doubt them, of recognizing that the confusion you feel in the presence of a manipulative person is itself a signal. Clarity is not supposed to be this difficult in a healthy relationship. You cannot control how someone chooses to engage with you, but you can control how much access they have to your life and your decisions. That control begins with seeing clearly. 4. The person who controls rather than connects control and care are not the same thing, but they are often presented as the same thing, and the confusion between them is one of the most common sources of harm in close relationships. A person who controls you will frame that control as protection, as concern for your well-being, as knowing what is best for you. The language sounds like love. The effect feels like confinement. Controlling behavior escalates gradually. It begins with preferences stated as needs, with monitoring presented as interest, with isolation framed as protecting the relationship from outside interference. Each step seems small enough to rationalize, but the cumulative effect is a life that has been progressively narrowed, options removed, connections severed, independence diminished, until the space available to you without permission is very small indeed. The Stoics were precise about personal freedom, not the political kind, the interior kind, the capacity to make your own choices, form your own judgments, and live in accordance with your own values. Epictetus, who had experienced the most extreme external loss of freedom imaginable, built an entire philosophy around the idea that this interior freedom cannot be taken unless you surrender it. A controlling person is asking you to surrender it incrementally, one small accommodation at a time, one small restriction at a time, until the surrender is so complete that you can no longer clearly remember what your own preferences and judgments actually were before they were replaced. The recognition of this pattern is the beginning of reclaiming what has been given away. and reclamation begins with the simple, uncomfortable question: which of my choices right now are actually mine, and which of them have been shaped by what I know will be acceptable to someone else? 5. The person who lies as a way of being. There is a difference between a person who lies under pressure, in a specific situation, to avoid a specific consequence, and a person for whom deception is a fundamental orientation toward reality. The pathological liar does not lie because the truth in this particular moment is inconvenient. They lie because their relationship with truth is structurally different from most people's. They experience no particular discomfort at the gap between what is real and what they are saying. They maintain contradictory stories without the internal friction that would make that difficult for most people. They add detail and texture to fabrications with the ease of someone recounting something they actually witnessed. Marcus Aurelius placed honesty among the highest virtues precisely because he understood what its absence costs. A life built on deception is a life built on an unstable foundation. Everything above it is contingent on the lies below it holding. And lies require maintenance. They require memory, consistency, and the ongoing management of what different people have been told. The effect on you, in relationship with a pathological liar, is a specific kind of disorientation. You begin to distrust your own perception. You find yourself constantly trying to reconcile contradictory information. You experience a background anxiety that you cannot quite name because you cannot quite identify its source. That anxiety has a source. It is the unacknowledged recognition that the ground you are standing on is not solid. Seneca wrote that inner peace is one of the most valuable things a person can possess, and that it is undermined not by the dramatic events of life, but by the slow accumulation of small disturbances to clarity. A liar in your life is a constant source of exactly that disturbance, not through any single dramatic deception, but through the ongoing requirement to manage uncertainty about what is actually real. The Stoic response is to return consistently to what you can verify through your own direct experience, to trust what the evidence shows rather than what the explanation offers, and to recognize that a relationship built on consistent deception is not a relationship. It is a performance you are being asked to participate in. Protecting yourself, the practice of deliberate boundaries. Recognizing these patterns is only useful if it leads to action. And the action the Stoics would have advocated is not aggressive or reactive. It is deliberate, clear, and sustained. Boundaries are not walls built to keep people out. They are definitions of what you will and will not engage with, what you will and will not tolerate, what you will and will not allow into the domain of your life that you are responsible for protecting. The Stoics were clear that you cannot control other people's behavior. You cannot force someone to be honest, to be empathetic, to stop manipulating, to stop controlling. What you can control is what you respond to, what you engage with, what you allow to have access to your time and your energy and your attention. Setting a boundary clearly means naming, without anger and without lengthy justification, what you will and will not accept. I will not continue this conversation while I am being spoken to disrespectfully. I am not available to discuss this right now. I have made this decision and I am not going to be revising it. Brevity matters here. The longer the explanation you offer, the more material you provide for the kind of person who will use your explanation against you. A clean, calm statement of your position, delivered without apology and without elaboration, communicates something that a lengthy justification never can. That you are certain, that the position does not require defense, that you have already thought it through. Consistency matters equally. A boundary stated once and then abandoned under pressure is not a boundary. It is a negotiation position. The people who will respect your boundaries tend to do so immediately. The people who will test them do so precisely because they have learned that sustained pressure produces results. Consistency removes that incentive. Epictetus wrote that discipline is not the imposition of restriction on freedom. It is the practice that makes genuine freedom possible. Your boundaries are that discipline applied to your relationships. They are not punishments you are imposing on someone else. They are protections you are creating for yourself. And sometimes protecting yourself means distance. Sometimes the most honest assessment of a pattern of behavior leads to the recognition that continued proximity to someone is costing you things that no relationship is worth: your peace, your clarity, your trust in your own perception. Your access to the version of yourself that exists before you have been managed and manipulated and controlled. Distance, chosen deliberately and without bitterness, is not a failure. It is a decision about where your life is going and who deserves to be part of it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should not expect people who act against their nature to suddenly act differently. We should simply adjust what we allow and plan accordingly. That adjustment is wisdom, not cynicism, not hardness. Wisdom about the difference between the relationship you hoped for and the relationship the evidence has actually shown you. Closing 5 patterns. Charm that conceals a different character beneath, the absence of genuine empathy, manipulation of your perception and your choices, the slow narrowing of your autonomy through control, and deception as a way of being rather than a response to a particular situation. None of these are comfortable to recognize in someone you care about. That discomfort is real, and it deserves to be honored. Seeing clearly is not the same as not caring. It is possible to grieve the relationship you thought you had, while still making the honest assessment about what the pattern of evidence is actually showing. The Stoics did not advise us to become indifferent to the people in our lives. They advised us to see them clearly, to hold our own values steady regardless of what someone else's behavior is attempting to produce in us, to recognize that we cannot pour genuine care and genuine energy into every container indefinitely, especially when the container has demonstrably been taking far more than it has ever been giving back. Your peace is not a luxury. It is the foundation from which everything else in your life operates, and protecting it is not selfishness. It is the precondition for being genuinely useful to the people in your life who actually deserve your presence. Choose one of these 5 patterns, the one that named something you have been observing without fully acknowledging. Sit with what it actually means, and then take one step, however small, toward the clarity that honest recognition makes possible. If this video reached something real in you, leave a comment below. Write one line: "I choose to see clearly," not as a performance, as a commitment to yourself. Subscribe to Stoic Journal and turn on the bell. Every week there is content like this, for people who are serious about protecting what matters. Until next time, see clearly, stand firmly, choose wisely,